Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome all of you to another episode of Defusing the WMSCOG. I'm your host, Edgar, and today we have another special guest, another ex-member of the WMSCOG, Avery. Avery, I'm going to turn over the floor to you and allow you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Avery, and I was part of the church for around a couple weeks, 3 or 4.
Okay. So it was a short time, but like I always tell everybody, one day, even 1 hour in that church is a long time. And so, this is another angle, another perspective of someone that was in for a shorter time, but I'm sure that you know how many members there are that reach out that are kind of like on the fence, and sometimes they've only been a weekend, they haven't been fully indoctrinated, but they're kind of doing their research and they want to know, is this the place that I want to stay in? And so having this kind of interview with someone that was in for like a short time, I think it'll also be very revealing because it's a different angle and a different perspective to take into account. So without further ado, Avery, I want to ask you, like, so what location like did you get preached to at? Like what city and state are you from?
Well, I'm from St. Peters, Missouri. I think it's around Chesterfield where they have the church.
Okay. Okay. And so when was this when they actually like approached you?
My mom's boss actually came to her and was talking about how he loves this church and it changed his whole life, and he invited us there.
Oh wow. So it was your mom's boss that, so your family got invited. Was it just you and your mom that
Me,
ended
my
up
mom,
going?
and sister.
Okay. And like around what time was, like, what year was this? Was it this year? Was it 2024 or
Yes, it was this year.
this year? So that's very recent, even better. Because yeah, I definitely want to hear kind of what they're telling people now, the new converts. So yeah, let's get into a little bit about your story. So they approached your mom, and then how was that conversation with your mom? Like, how did she feel about that? And were you with your mom when she was approached by her boss, or did she come home and kind of tell you guys, hey, we're going to a Bible study?
She came home actually and told me about it, and then I had gone in the next day with her, and he had came up to me and talked about it.
Okay. And so what was your like first impression?
I was excited. I've been wanting to find a church for so long, and it sounded like a good opportunity.
Okay. And so I assume, so you did go physically to the church, right? To do the study?
Yes.
Okay. So when you guys went, what was that experience like? What was the first thing you noticed? If you could like go back, what was the first thing you noticed when you stepped in the door?
It felt very loving. Like I felt like they really cared about us and really wanted to teach us stuff.
Okay, so you experienced the love bombing phase where right off the back it almost feels like supernatural, or it's hard to describe because it's like they make you feel like a rock star, right? Like when you walk in, they want to cater to you, like, what do you want to drink, what do you want to eat, or we're so happy that you're here. And it's a tactic, fortunately for you, you got out before the love bombing wore off. But yeah, a lot of members don't know that. So like the people that are in there for a short time, that love bombing goes away after a while, and then their true colors come out. So what was one of the, like, what was one of the things that maybe they said to you that stood out to you? Not about the study. Was there anything that they said in particular, like when they were kind of like love bombing you, that you remember?
Um, they really just they like walked us around the church, and the way that they kept like catering to us, like, "Oh, do you want a Dr. Pepper, or do you want a squirt, or do you want something to eat?" And it
Yeah.
felt like I was like in a good place.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's like a almost like a car salesman, right? It's like, I don't know if you ever been to go buy a car, but that's what it, like, one, the pressure, and then like two, they're coming at you and they're gonna be super nice and super helpful, and they're gonna offer you things. But what's the motive behind it? That's the thing that we need to think about, right? So their motive is they're trying to recruit you into the church. So let me ask you this. So what that first interaction, what do you remember what you kind of studied about? It doesn't have to be word for word, but like do you kind of remember like maybe what was the main point of their study?
The first study, I remember we just kind of went over a couple verses. I'm not directly sure what it was. I think it was about Jesus and the Jews and stuff. And then
Yeah.
right at the end, they kind of told us, "Oh, hey, by the way, there's a mother of," and then kind of it
Mm.
ended immediately, no questions asked.
Okay, so it was like it was a shorter study, but they did tell you about they were talking about Jesus. Maybe they could have started with the fig tree or secret of forgiveness of sins, something like that.
Yes.
And then they mentioned to you mother. So afterward, how long would you say you were in there like the first night that you guys studied? How long did the
Um,
study last?
I would say around 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay. So yeah, that's definitely different because I would say in my experience and like in the experience of a lot of, ex members that I've talked to, like try to keep members in there at least for like a few hours if you can, to try to kind of like get some of those studies off. The only thing that I can think of maybe why it was such a short time was did you guys happen to like have to leave? Did you guys have to cut it short or did they cut it short?
I think it was like after the church closed because my mom had work at the time. So it was
Yeah.
getting pretty late. And I think that's what it was about.
Okay. So maybe after the church closed. So here's the thing, you might not know this, but like they might tell you the church closes, but like from my experience, like those churches stay open as late as they can get members to stay in there and study, especially if they're like new converts. So like in my experience, they sometimes had older members like me in there studying until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because they were trying to indoctrinate us, and to basically fall in line with their teachings. So it's very ironic. I wonder what exactly was going on, or if maybe the member that was appointed to study with you guys was maybe like less experienced and maybe he only knew a certain amount of studies, which would maybe be the reason why you only got 30 minutes in. But so okay, so you were the first night you were in for 30 minutes. So my question is, once you guys left, like, did you guys get baptized that night?
We got baptized, I want to say, after 3 to 4 Bible studies.
Okay. So then after the first Bible study that night when you guys left, what was the conversation like with your mom on the car ride back to your house after listening to what they had to say?
Um, I know that I really enjoyed it because I thought, like, oh, they're answering all our questions. Like, they must seem to, like, really care about this. And my mom grew up Pentecostal in a Pentecostal church, so
Yeah.
she kind of seemed on the fence about it, but it had nothing to do with like the Bible study in particular because it seemed all like very normal stuff the first day, but
Okay.
it was just because of what she grew up with.
Right. Okay. So she wasn't really too much against it at first, but then also it could be because she wasn't there long enough. That study didn't last long enough for her to raise some red flags because I would also like to mention that these cults, one thing that they all have in common is they don't ever tell you what they truly believe up front, like all the deep information. They can maybe give you like a face value, like vague information, like, oh yeah, we believe in a mother. That's rare, but they do sometimes do it. Sometimes they'll tell you they believe in a second coming Christ. Most of the time, it'll be mostly like focused on Passover, but they'll never tell you up front, like, hey, we believe in a Korean woman as God who's alive right now, lives in South Korea, and she calls the shots in our church. And we believe in another God, which was her husband, her spiritual husband, who lived in the flesh in Korea, who died in 1985, is buried in the ground. We believe that he was Jesus, and he established this church. And so this church, in this church, you have to keep all the commands of God, meaning you have to be there every Saturday for 3 hours out of the day, but really in between services as well. Third day service, the feast, you have to preach every day, you have to do construction, or help in the kitchen or the kids room. So they don't tell you any of this up front, right? Did you hear any of that like up front? Of
No.
course not. Why? Because that'll scare people away. You know what I mean? I haven't even gotten into the part where the 5 a.m. services, or where they encourage members to wake up at 5 a.m. and pray, because they say Heavenly Mother in Korea, she always wakes up and prays for all of us at 5 a.m. every morning because she doesn't sleep, which is ridiculous because who doesn't sleep, right? And like, there's no way she would still be alive if she didn't sleep. And I'm pretty sure at 5 a.m. she's knocked out. There ain't no way that she's praying for anybody, because she literally doesn't even know their members' names. So anyway, so okay, so the first day you guys are on the car ride home and not really saying much. So you were kind of happy with what you heard. It kind of made sense because the way they break down their Bible. So what was the second experience like, the second study? Did it change, or was it kind of the same experience?
Um, it definitely changed due to the fact that my mom's boss was the one who introduced us to this church. He started making it to where she was free on Saturdays, so she could go. So
Mm.
we went a little bit earlier. I think we went around 11 o'clock, and I want to say we stayed for like 2 hours. But before we even, when we were walking into the church, we had thought we heard some sort of other language, and they had been rushing us past because, like, I guess, like, out of respect because there was something going on. And we had kind of asked, and they're like, oh, he just has a really thick accent. That's probably what you heard.
Right. And do you know, like, so, but this wasn't during a service or anything, was it?
I am not sure. There was a couple people in the church pews, and then there was someone standing in the front. So I'm guessing there was something going on. I have no clue what it could have been,
And it was
but
on a Saturday?
mhm.
Okay, so then it could have been a church service then, because what they'll do is they have this prayer called the Prayer of Our Wishes, which is a Korean prayer that they'll literally recite in Korean at the end of their services. And so it kind of freaks a lot of people out, especially like and it is freaky, you know what I mean? Even like now that I'm out, obviously when I was in, I first thought that it was creepy, but then you're in it for years, and so it just became second nature to me. But now that I've left, I'm like, man, how creepy was that? Like, you're literally keeping service, and you're hearing the Bible being taught to you in English, and then at the end of the service, everyone together just starts busting out this Korean prayer out of nowhere. And if you're like a new member, you're gonna be like, what is going on here? What are they doing right now? Are they cursing me, or you know what I mean? And so it's definitely weird. But so okay, so you're saying that was one thing that you noticed that was different. And then so after, did you guys stay and study after you heard that, or did you guys leave after that?
No, we stayed and studied in a different room.
And how did the study go?
It was pretty normal. Everything seemed okay. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary.
Okay. And then when you guys left, did you guys talk about that, what you guys had kind of heard, when you first walked in?
Um, I don't think so. I think we kinda just brushed it off as, "Oh, like, we just walked by really fast, like, there's no way. They're not talking in tongues, or they're not doing it in a different
Right.
language, or, like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. We're in
Yeah.
Missouri."
Right, right. Yeah. So I could definitely see how, yeah, you guys were just kind of like not wanting to know what was going on. It kind of just leave it alone, right? And so I get it. I get it, especially because you guys, were new, And so now take me after, after that took place. That would be the third time that you guys would go and study. How was that experience? And like, was that you said you got baptized on the third or fourth time you went?
Um, I wanna say 4th.
Okay. So let's just go to the fourth time unless there's anything like specific or crazy that happened in the third time. Was there that you can
No.
remember? No. Okay, so the fourth time, what was it that actually got you guys to say I want to get baptized?
They were talking about how Passover was this amazing spiritual thing that we need to keep, and we, did online Bible studies during this, just talking about baptizing and Passover and things like that. So, it just once they said that and they were like, "Oh, it happens, like, once a year, like, you can't miss out on it," it was like, "Maybe we should really get baptized for this, like, this seems like it's important."
Yeah. Okay. So they hit you with Passover and they kind of went in depth with it. And did you guys get the impression that like once you kept the Passover that you guys would be like saved 100%?
They didn't say I maybe they did, but I was pretty tired. It was always late at night usually, but they were saying, like, it's really important, basically.
Yeah. So enough to make you feel that if you didn't keep it, that maybe you wouldn't be protected or saved.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So now take me through the baptism. So you're saying that night you said you were doing some online studies. The night that you got baptized, was it an online study and then you guys went to the church, or did you guys go to the church in person and then after hearing that study of the Passover the fourth time, you guys finally got baptized?
We got baptized and then we did a study in person.
Okay, but okay, wait. So I'm a little confused. So when you heard about, you said what got you to get baptized was when you heard about the Passover, correct?
Yes.
And was that the fourth study?
In-person study. I didn't think about the online ones. We did
Okay.
online ones throughout the week.
Okay. So you did the in-person study about the Passover, and then that's when you guys got baptized, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so take me through that. How was the baptism ordeal? Like, what do you remember? How did you feel?
Um before we got baptized, they kind of walked us through what was going to happen and um, different things like that. And when we got baptized, I didn't catch on to it, but they said the Ong Shang Hong guy during
Mm,
it, and my mom caught on to it.
mm,
And whenever we were walking to do Bible study, she had asked about it, and the pastor was like did like a little like smug grin and was like, "Oh, they'll tell you about that. Like they'll tell you."
mm. Wow. So now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this whole situation. So that again, they didn't tell you guys up front who An San Hong was. So you guys heard it through the actual baptism, right? When they're crying out this dead guy's name while they're praying over you. How creepy is that? So afterwards you're saying your mom asked about it and he kind of just said, oh well, you kind of like hear about that later, right? So let me ask you this, since your mom caught on to that even after the pastor said that, when you guys went home, did you guys talk about that at all? Like, did she bring it up to you about her thinking that name was weird or anything?
No, we had like she said she had honestly forgotten about it because whenever we went in there, it was kind of like they just immediately like started getting into it and she had forgotten about it. And then I completely forgot to add this to before we got baptized, but when we had started to like do the paperwork, it felt like they were purposefully distracting us by like three people talking over each other and like saying a bunch
Mm.
of different things and didn't let us write anything down except for our signatures.
Yeah, so one thing that I want to say is like, because I would lead a lot of members to baptism, and so when I would do that, sometimes I would see like some members were more hesitant than others, and so when I would like kind of have a feeling that they were, kind of on the fence, or even if they didn't give me that signal, but it was like, man, I really want them to get baptized, and I don't want them to like get cold feet. That's one of the tactics that you can, do at that time is like talk and kind of like, if you have someone around, just spark up a conversation so that you're not really thinking about what you're getting yourself into. And when you're writing stuff in this book, you're giving them a lot of your information, your phone number, your address, and there's certain times where even I remember the church, not when you're baptized, but other times where they even ask for like your social security number and stuff like that, which is crazy because what is a church going to do with that information? You know what I mean? And that sounds more like a business than a church. But okay, so you guys notice that, but you guys, fill out all the paperwork and everything. So all right, so you get baptized, and you guys that whole time you guys didn't really notice anything. You kind of just brushed it under the rug, the weird language they were talking in, and when you guys heard the name, so you guys were just kind of like just trying to go with the flow. So what was it eventually that actually made you guys like leave, or what was the red flag that you guys saw that was like, okay, I'm not coming back here?
When we had gone to Passover, um, we basically like we just got there, everything seemed fine. They made pizza, all that stuff, or they ordered pizza, and we had sat down and we started singing out of the book of songs or something like that. And my mom noticed it was weird because we were praising the Ong Shong Hong guy, and it was a book about mothers. And in my head, I'm just really happy that I'm finally a part of a church like this. And I didn't think about any of that stuff. And my mom
Yeah,
was kind of like, hey, do you want to pretend to be sick and let's leave? I was like, oh
yeah,
no, like it's fine. And
yeah.
then we had gotten our feet washed and walked back up with the wine and bread. And my mom kind of got up and she was like, yeah, no, let's get out of here. Like, we're leaving. Um, to the point
Wow.
where
So now you guys got your feet washed. That only happens on Passover Day. So it was Passover Day, and you guys literally walked out of the service. I just want to clap right now because that is awesome. So okay, so how did that happen? Like, so she gets up and she's like, let's get out of here. I'm pretty sure because it's Passover Day and they're so like, extra when it comes to that day. Did they try to stop you guys or like ask you where you guys were going or anything like that?
the lady sitting next to us announced it and was like, where are you going? To the whole church. And
Wow.
we were sitting in the back, so we thought we could get out of there quietly, no interruptions, but this lady ruined it for us. Like,
Right.
and um our Bible study teacher actually chased us out to the point where she lost a shoe because she was like on crutches or something, and I felt bad for
Wow.
that, but
That is crazy. No, I kudos. Don't feel bad because ultimately what they were trying to do is get you guys to get more indoctrinated so you wouldn't leave. You know what I mean? And so, no, kudos to you and your mom for leaving. And, thankfully your mom was able to finally, see the red flags and say, I'm out of here, and what a day to realize that, which is on their most special day. And I always say that the World Mission Society, they make such a big deal of this Passover that it's like actually more like borderline idolatry because what they're doing is they're putting this Passover even over Jesus himself. They make such an emphasis on this Passover. Like, for instance, when you said, man, I heard about the Passover and it made me want to get baptized, you know, you didn't hear about Jesus. They were not telling you, hey, if you believe in Jesus, Jesus is the one that saves you. They're telling you, no, 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 Passover, you need Passover. You don't need Jesus. You need Passover. You need the bread and wine in order to save you, in order to forgive you of your sins, in order to go back to heaven. That is idolatry, right? That is not nowhere near what the Bible communicates, you know? And so it is totally awesome that you guys left on Passover day. So now take me to the part where you guys are running off and they're chasing you. Did they chase you into the parking lot, or did they just kind of let you guys go once you made it out of the building?
There was a lobby, so we had ran into the lobby, and because she was following us, she brought out her Bible and was like, "Oh, well, I'm so sorry we didn't tell you this, but like we have someone in Korea who's our mother, and this Ong Chung
Wow.
Ho guy is like actually God," and just like trying to like really get us to like believe in this. And even my mom's boss came out and started doing it too, and he seemed really
Wow.
stressed and was like, well, like, I just don't want you to quit, I don't want you to like not show up. And my mom was like, well, I care about you so much and like thank you for this, but like this is not our belief system, like this is
Yeah.
crazy for us, like.
Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy. So, and I bet that obviously it's not that any ill intentions on your mom's boss's part, but like I'm almost certain that that's kind of helped, your mom's boss, it facilitated them being your mom's boss to kind of push her into going to the church, and she might have had good intentions, but again, the truth is not brought up up front. And so that's why I asked you earlier, like, did you guys hear about the mother, or about Ansan Hong? And you said yes, but obviously you guys didn't understand what they meant by it until that day, because like you said, your mom was like, well, wait a second, that's not our belief system. This is wild, right? Like, you guys literally believe that this lady is alive and she's forgiving us of our sins and she's got in the flesh. That's crazy. So take me, like, so afterwards, right? How was the car ride home that day when you guys left?
Um, when we left, my mom was like, she felt really bad. And like, I obviously do not blame her at all. Like, she's my mom. I love her. I know she did not mean to put us in that situation. Um, but we were the car ride home and definitely emotional. Like, me and my sister were crying, and my mom was crying. So, because we thought, like, oh my gosh, like we were just in a cult, like there's no way. And we had looked into it and it was just so
Right.
crazy.
So, okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So, because Passover was recent, like Passover is this literally just happened not that
Last
long ago. Yeah,
last Saturday.
last Saturday. So, yeah, I was gonna say this is fresh. So, how did you actually, like, when you left and you guys are like, okay, we were in a cold, this is wild. How did you guys come across like content to about the World Mission Society? How did you guys even know where to look?
They had handed us a sheet of the paper that they were like wanting us to pray in Korean and stuff. Um, and just so we could like follow along when they started praying it. Um, and I had searched up his name, and then I scrolled down and there was a Reddit thread about him.
Mm,
And basically I read all of these comments of people like saying like you need to leave, like this is not safe, stuff talking about like I don't know if it's like this anymore. I probably has changed, but there was sex trafficking and arranged marriages and stuff like that.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah. So I can speak a little to the allegations of the human trafficking or the sex trafficking. So that's not real. Like, that's not true. The closest that you can get to them human trafficking people would be more like, the arranged marriages, I would say, because in a way you're still forcing a human being to get married to someone else, without fully knowing them and, at a coercion, so, but as far as them like kidnapping people or stuff like that, like they don't do that. But that still doesn't make them a good place, because obviously they lie to you, they worship false gods, they withhold information from you, they don't tell you the full story, all the information up front. So it's definitely a cult. But so when you guys like you're starting to do this research, did you tell your mom, or were you kind of like doing this by yourself? And this was after Passover, right? Like after you guys left?
This was in the car, yeah.
Oh, in the car.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Um,
so what were you so when you did this research, did you tell your mom right away, or did you kind of keep it to yourself?
I was reading all the comments out loud, like shaking, like freaking out. Like, I think at one point, like my mom, we had pulled over into like Walmart or something like that just to kind of cool down after this,
Yeah.
and I just showed her everything that I found because it was very easy to find.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because that shows that at least there's in the information is out there now. Because I remember that, years ago, like a decades ago, there wasn't hardly any information on this cult, even when you looked it up. So just to hear you say that you were able to type in his name and, see some information that told the truth about the matter, that's very good to hear. That's very refreshing to hear. So now I guess now my question is, how did you run into my content?
So initially before I had commented on your video saying that I had just left it, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but actually before that my mom had sent me a YouTube video of yours, and I didn't click until
Wow.
I saw your YouTube channel, but
Wow. So your mom sent you a video of me like doing an interview, or like hosting an interview like I am now?
hosting an interview.
Okay, so she sent you a video of my channel. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you realized that that was the person you had reached out to on TikTok, right?
Yes.
Okay, pretty cool. So what did your mom think about, like, did she watch any of the interviews?
I think she watched one interview of yours, and then she didn't directly click on your channel. She was just scrolling through YouTube, like
Okay.
search. So,
Okay, so she was trying to inform herself as well, right? That's good. So like where are you guys at now? Like after all this happened, like how do you guys feel now? Where are you guys at?
um, definitely, we're a little scared about them coming to our house and being like, "Hey, where are you guys at?" Like, because they have our
Yeah.
address and all that. And I've heard people say that online that they've done that. But
Yes.
right now, we are just trying to find a new church. Both me and my mom has said like we feel gross after being baptized in a fake prophet's name. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for
so
sure. No, I can definitely relate to that. And again, I want to commend you guys for, doing your research, getting out, and then also, continuing to, want to find out, like what is the truth, and continue your walk with God and being a Christian. And that's commendable, so kudos to you guys. I'm happy that you guys are in a better place, even though I know, like you said, you guys are still a little, antsy about them, coming to your house. And how telling, I mean, for the audience, I hope that you guys can see this, because again, you don't really hear this from members that were in for like such a long time. Because when you leave, you're kind of like numb to it, like after being in there for so long. But like for people that were in there for a short time, just look at like how much anxiety, this place can bring, even in such a short time, right? And so you guys are literally like fearing that they're going to show up to your house, and they definitely will. They've done that, so many times. But here's the beautiful thing about it: you don't got to be scared of these people. Like, you guys can block their phone numbers. They show up to your house. You don't owe them an explanation. You can shut the door in their face. You can call the police. You can do whatever you want. Or if you can text them and say, "Hey, I don't want you guys coming to my house. I want you guys to leave me, alone. I don't believe the same things that you guys believe, and if you guys come to my house, I'll call the police." And so there's nothing to be scared about. They're just very, they're gonna pressure you guys into wanting to. All they want is they want you guys to come back so that they can indoctrinate you guys. But you guys are already taking the right steps. You guys are wanting to go, figure out your faith, go to a normal, regular Christian church. So that's definitely, you're not gonna be hearing any Korean prayers or anything weird like that. So that's pretty cool. And then you're in Missouri, so that's actually pretty close to where I'm at here in Kansas. I actually went to Missouri multiple times because um, sometimes we would have like something called educations where like churches would gather in one spot that was like closest to all the churches in the Midwest, and one of those locations was in Missouri. So I know there was one of those cults in Missouri was in Springfield, Missouri. There was one in Columbia, Missouri, one in Jefferson City, Missouri. So they're all over the place in Missouri. So just keep an eye out. Hopefully now you guys can also like help spread awareness, and just everyone, even you coming on here and telling your story is like helping in ways that you can't even imagine, because like I said, it's another perspective. And I think that, even though it was very short, your short time there, it's very telling what you went through. The even nowadays you can see, because a lot of these people that gave their interviews, these are members that went in for years. So they were recruited 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So to hear someone that was recruited this year and they're still talking, like they're still not giving up all the information up front. They're still not telling you that Ansan Hong is God, or that Zangil Ja is a human being in the flesh. They're still withholding this information from people even in 2025. I think that that's very telling. So thank you very much for coming on here and being brave enough to tell your story. I want to ask you one last thing before you go. Um, what advice, if you could give advice to people that are maybe new, that are also maybe a few weeks in, a few days in, just got approached, what advice would you give to those members if they're watching your video right now?
Um, no real church would ever try and love bomb you or manipulate you into being there, or ever say anything like that there's oh, I can't speak.
You're fine. You're fine. So no, I get it. Like, in other words, keep a watch for the red flags, right? Keep an eye out for the red flags, the love bombing and withholding information, because obviously, like you said, no real church, no true church is gonna do those things. Because first of all, if it's a real church, if it's a good church that believes in Jesus, Jesus would be enough for a regular normal Christian church. You don't need to spice things up or withhold information. The gospel message of Jesus is enough. You don't need to withhold information. You can tell people up front, we believe in Jesus, that he died, he was buried, and he was resurrected. Very simple, right? It's been preached for 2,000 years. So it's places like this that you have to keep an eye out for, because any place that doesn't give you all the information up front is because they're definitely hiding something. So again, Avery, I just want to thank you again for your time and for sharing your story. Is there any last words that you want to say?
Um, there was one thing that I was gonna say earlier that I forgot to. Whenever I had first gone there, they told me that you can't worship anything other than God, including crosses when it's a
Mm.
symbolization for Jesus, but they worship Passover like it's God itself.
Yeah, that's very good. Yes, exactly. So they're hypocrites, in other words, because they'll tell you, Christians that they have a cross that's idols, right? That's idol worship. But like you said, they elevate Passover to like the status of an idol. Like behind me, I have a picture of the Last Supper, right? And so they'll idolize this. And the funny thing is, they'll bash Christians for having a cross around their neck or in their house, and they'll say that's an idol, right? And if a Christian tries to defend themselves and say, well, we're not worshiping the cross, it's just a reminder of what Jesus did on the cross, they'll say, no, 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 it doesn't matter what excuse you have, that's still an idol. Yet they have pictures of the Last Supper in their church, and using their logic, that should be an idol too, because it's a picture of something, right? And so it's a picture of something that, they're trying to portray God, but that's not what God looked like. So again, that's idolatry. But what would they say? This is where they're being hypocrites. They would say, oh, no, 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 we have this picture because it's just a reminder that Jesus kept the Passover for us, right? Gave us the Passover. But then you're like, wait a second, how does that make sense? Because I just told you that that's why I have the cross, to remind me of what Jesus did, but you didn't accept that answer. Yet you make an excuse for this picture and say, oh, I can use this picture to help me remember, but you can't use a cross to help you remember. Make it make sense. They do not make sense. They're hypocrites. So yes, very good point. They definitely idolize Passover. And again, Passover is not bad. As Passover itself is not bad. What's bad is when you put it on a level that's higher than God. In other words, when you go to a church and the church is harping about you need to keep this tradition, this rule in order to literally save you and forgive you, and yet you didn't mention Jesus in there, then you know something is wrong. Because instead of preaching that Jesus is actually the way of salvation and forgiveness, they're preaching this rule, this ordinance, this tradition over the Messiah himself, and that's where they get it wrong. So very good point. Thank you again, Avery, for mentioning that and for being brave enough to come on this channel and tell your story. And I hope that to the audience out there, I hope that you guys find it useful. Until next time, thank you for watching another episode of Diffusing the WMSCOG.